Good morning, folks. It's Pawpaw. Now, today's video is not going to be the regular gifts and goodies that you normally see. Why not, Pawpaw? Well, several reasons. I normally make the Saturday videos on Friday or Thursday if I have time. We have been swamped this week with things going on here at the house. We've had babies all week. Carly felt real bad on Thursday, a little fever, and so kind of hanging with her a lot. You know, she loves her pawpaw. So that kind of cut that video time out. We didn't get to go for rides or anything, just kind of hanging out with her. Today, Gigi this is Friday, it's the 19th. It's my brother's birthday. He would be 80 years old today, my brother Riley. Talking about him for a minute, you know, his birthdays, he always had great birthday parties. Joanne would always throw a good party for him. Guys that he worked with at Yellow Freight would come, and friends and kin folks and stuff. Cousins I would usually go, and some cousins from Baytown would always show up, and always a good time, barbecue and stuff. And anyway, days he would be 80 years old. And talk about that, most of the Morrow men don't make it that long. That's kind of crazy, I guess, but up in our 70s, we usually burn out. Yeah. Anyway, back to my story. Gigi has a doctor's appointment this morning, so I've got to go to pick up groceries. And at noon, we leave to go pick up Lex, go to Houston. So our day is just end to end to end. But I wanted to tell you a little story so you don't, it's not a complete waste. Maybe you'll find some enjoyment out of it, maybe. Now what I'm going to do this morning, I'm going to show you some things that we use in cutting wood. And I'll tell you the story as we go, and I'm going to show you some tools we used. And we'll talk about it. And we'll do it out there, maybe with Ivan. Ivan likes to hear stories. And I got to feed him and brush him, and we'll just talk about it one with Ivan. So come along. Let me show you my shirt first. Got last week. I'm not retired. I'm a professional pawpaw. Yeah, that's right. Professional pawpaw. All right, let's get moving. You know, my dad, I was kind of the family historian, and he'd always tell me stories behind some of the old tools he had and some we used. This is called a crosscut saw. It's a wooden handle with a steel blade, always about almost I guess a 5-foot blade, and a handle on each end. This is what we cut trees with, our firewood. My dad kept it razor sharp, and how it works is a person on each end. You notch one side of the tree with an axe or something the way you want it to fall. Then you take this saw, one person on each end, my dad on one end, and me or my brother, and even sometimes my mom would be on the other end. And you push it into, hold with pressure against the tree, and this person here pulls. It pulls the saw against the tree, and then this one pulls. This one, you never push, you just pull. He pulls, this one pulls, and you keep pressure against the tree, it'll cut right on through that tree. It's not fast, but you'll get the tree cut down. Now, once the tree is down, you're not through, because then you got to cut every block off for firewood with this same saw. But at least the tree's laying down flat. Now, for limbs, let me say one more thing about this saw. This saw is well over 100 years old. My great grandpa used this saw. The handles have been replaced several times, so, but they're wood. But the metal saw itself. And then my grandpa even carried a saw to Arkansas many times that he cut cross ties in the winter up there when he would go up and help his folks. And this old saw's been around, and my dad used it, and I've never used it, since my dad and us stopped using it. We never had a chainsaw until I was a grown man. So, but I've used this every year growing up. As soon as I was big enough to pull that handle. This over here is an old homemade buck saw. I don't know how old it is. My dad had it, and I don't know if my dad made this or it was even before, maybe, I'm not sure, but it's a buck saw, and I used it to cut the limbs and stuff. It's a metal blade, but this is all wood, and you tighten that bolt up there, pull in at the top and make the bottom pull out, and that would tighten the blade. And it had a couple little bolts here holding the blade in. That's called a buck saw. It's homemade. A couple other tools we used on cutting trees down, and I'm going to show them to you before we go out to see Ivan. Now, you use your buck saw to cut wood like this. Now, these here are cut. Now, these have been cut with a chainsaw, but we would cut limbs with the buck saw, and we'd cut them like 18 inches long, like we would our blocks of wood, and because they'll burn also. And now these here I use for my fire pit when we're out here building fire. And then you cut your wood. You get a couple of things here. Don't shake it up too much. You cut your tree into blocks like this right here. And the tools you used, the trees most of the time will be bigger than that. But you would use a wedge. That's a metal wedge. This thing weighs probably 5 or 6 pounds, 5 pounds. It's sharp on one end, blunt on the other. And you stick it on top of your block of wood like this, and you would drive it down with that sledgehammer until it split. That would make 2 chunks, be half in 2. Then you would do it again on the 4 pieces, and you'd come up like this one this size with 4 pie-shaped slices of pie, you might say, of wood for your heater. Okay. Then you put your wedge in it, get started, and your block. See how it split? Half in 2. Be half in 2. Then you come back and do it again. There you go. Now, that would end up being pie-shaped like this. All right. A lot of them are a lot harder to split than that one. A lot of them were a lot harder because sometimes they have like a knot on them, and you might need a couple of wedges to split it out. It'd be a lot of work. Plus, it was work. Period. Just plain work. And so let's go over and talk to Ivan while I brush him, and I'll finish the story. But those are the main tools we used. So we used an axe also. But the crosscut saw to cut the tree down, and then to block it up. And we usually cut our blocks like 18 inches. I believe that's what our heater took. I may be wrong. Then we used a buck saw for cutting the limbs like you saw these out here, because they'll burn also. We didn't waste much. We didn't waste much. And then once we brought the blocks, we sometimes, if a big, huge blocks, we'd split them down there in the woods. But if they wasn't real big, we could load them. We'd load them on a trailer and bring them home and split them when we had time to split them. But we split all that stuff up and stack it so it would cure out, because green wood doesn't burn good. And in fact, it'll leave a lot of creosote up in your chimney, and that's the juice and stuff cooking out of green wood. And that'll coat your inside of your chimney. And then later on, you could have a hot fire, and that stuff will catch you on fire up in your chimney. It could burn your house down. Especially if it's a metal chimney, because it'll melt right through that metal. It's that hot. Creosote's dangerous. But anyway, let's go out and feed Ivan, and I'll tell you some more about it. Good morning, Ivan. Good morning, Ivan. Papa's here. Listen, I'm gonna feed you right here in this bucket and brush you, because I gotta tell a story. Okay? You don't mind? Give me that brush out. That's my old brush. Had it on the mule. My new brush is in there. But we'll just use the old one. It works. I brush him out in the pasture with this one. Anyway, cutting wood on our family was a family tradition. It was something we all did as a family. My mom too, and my sister, and my brother. My dad would pick out different trees over the course of a year or whatever, and we would use a couple of trees a year, because we also supplied wood to my Ivy. You got a gray spot right there, baby. What's that? Huh. You get gray-headed. You'd be like Pawpaw for long. It was a family tradition. We all went. My dad picked out the trees. We supplied also wood to my grandparents. They also cooked with wood. They had a wood-burning cook stove. And we had to cut that wood smaller. So, I was eating. I'm just gonna go over here, set my chair up in the shade, and we'll talk about it. Yeah. Sorry, folks. Anyway, we would all gather up. We'd go down. We'd take our water jugs with us, because we did this year round. It wasn't just like in the winter time. It wasn't just in the summer. It was year round. And we would go down with a tractor or trailer and our old crosscut saw and our axe and sledgehammer and wedges. Buck saw. and we would go to the tree my dad had picked out, and we'd cut it down. And we'd take turns on the end of the saw. Now, my dad usually did the whole thing, but us boys, my brother and I, and my sister, not my sister, my mom, we would take turns. Now, my sister may have, I can't remember. But we would take turns on the other end, and we'd cut that tree down, and then we'd cut it up in blocks. And once the tree was down, someone, the smaller ones, like you, myself, or my mom, or whoever, would take that buck saw and start cutting the limbs off. And you cut them into pieces. And I think my sister, usually she was the one that loaded the smaller wood into the trailer. It was a family affair. And we'd take breaks and have our water. And sometime around, we get ready to come home and eat. We'd come back home and eat, and then go back later. And we'd bring that wood home. And that, one tree, it might take several of my dad's off days for us to get it completely cut up and brought home. But we'd eventually get it home and stacked up, split and everything, and let it be cured out. And sometimes it'd be dead trees, so you didn't have to worry about that. Lightning might strike an old tree, or a tree just died or whatever. Those are the ones we'd cut first. My dad never cut a live tree, a good tree, unless he had to. But when you heat with wood, and that's your source of the wood, you have to do that sometimes. And Ivy, you okay, buddy? Y'all don't mind seeing the backside of Ivy, do you, when he eats? I can tell this story. And anyway, once all the wood was home, we'd cut wood, make smaller pieces, and would carry over to my grandparents, especially for their cook stove. It took smaller wood to cook with. And we do it year round because we kept them supplied in wood. They were elderly, and we kept them supplied in wood. And after school, even during the winter, our job as kids, our job was to make sure that there was wood stacked on that porch for my mom. So she didn't have to go out and dig around in the wood pile for wood. There would always be dry wood on the porch, because that's how we heated our home, and that's how she kept the house warm for us kids coming home from school, my dad coming from work or whatever. And I think probably every home in Plum Grove in our community back then probably heated with wood. And I love the smell. Come outside on a good crisp morning in the winter, and you smell that wood burning in the air. You smell it. It smells so good. And naturally, with everybody burning wood, the smells were here. They were here. And just something I love to think about. It was a lot of work. It was truly a lot of work. I didn't get a chainsaw until I was a grown man. So growing up, that's what we used. And nowadays, we'd hardly ever go cut a tree. We'll buy some wood, somebody's got to cut a tree, or somebody cut a tree out of their yard, need it hauled out or something, from church or something. They'll say, somebody wants some wood, come get it. We got a tree that needs to come down, we'll go cut a tree for them or whatever and haul it on. But that's our story about wood burning. And I'm going to show you something here in just a few minutes when I close this thing off. My grandpa, actually my great-grandpa, had a hatchet. Now, it was this hatchet he used for cutting kindling. Kindling is what the little pine hearts or whatever you're going to call them that he split up to start fires with. Small pieces of wood. And my dad said the rule was, you better not ever mess with his hatchet. He kept it stuck in a block of wood there by the kindling pile, and you better not, that was the rule, you better not mess with his hatchet. Ivan, I'll let you out just a minute, son. Finish your breakfast. I've already let Sophie and Carrie out because I knew it would be a circus here trying to feed him and tell a story. And I already put them over there with the goats for the day. And I'm about to go give my little man his bottle, then I got to take off and go pick up groceries. So it's going to be a pretty busy day. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this little story. It's not the gifts and goodies. We got several things to open, and we'll do it for next week. I did get I tell you what I got, and I don't have it with me. I'll show it to you next week. A lady in England sent me a 20-pound, no, not in weight, it's money. It's their money's not like ours, I guess. We have dollars, they have pounds, I guess, and I don't know what else they have. But anyway, it's a 20-pound piece, I guess you call it that. It's like a dollar bill, but it's a 20 pounds. So if I ever go to England, I'm not gonna be broke. I'm not gonna be broke. Anyway, I'll show that to you. And I got several cards and some packages we'll open up, but I'll have all that for you next Saturday. This has been really a tough week. And I knew y'all tune in Saturday morning wanting something. This may not make up for what you want, but at least you got to see the backside of Ivan. Now that's important. I see it all day long. I think everybody should see it. All right, I'm gonna go show you that hatchet. This is my great-grandpa's hatchet he used to cut kindling. And the handle, now I put the handle in it. My dad had this old head. He saved it. All those years when my dad took over the farm, all the old things that my great-grandpa had and my grandpa had, my dad more or less inherited it. And a lot of it's been lost over the years. One day we'll look at some of the stuff that he was able to keep. This old hatchet here was one of them. He cherished it, I guess you might say. He kept it. And one day he called me and said, son, I got something I want to give you. Because he knew I was the family historian. I was always listening to the history stories and trying to find out stuff. And he says, come down, I got something. So I went down and he gave it to me. And he told me the whole story about it. About how his grandpa would really get on them boys if they used this hatchet, didn't put it back where it went. They better leave it alone. You can imagine the temptation for a little boy. My dad talked about that too. What a temptation. That little hatchet stuck in that block of wood, when they'd be out there wanting to cut something down or playing, and everybody wanted a hatchet. It was a temptation. Uh-oh. But my grandpa said, we're not going to do it. You leave my hatchet alone. So anyway, my dad saved it. It's all pitted. It's old, pitted all out, but he gave it to me and I went and got a handle for it. I don't use it. It hangs in my man cave. Yeah, I don't know who will want this stuff when I'm gone. I don't think a whole lot of folks show interest in this stuff. But anyway, that's it. And I'm going to cut this thing off. All right, folks, I hope y'all enjoyed that. I'm going to cut this video off and get on the road. Talking about that wood, cutting wood, I don't know why I keep hitting that thing in my hand. I'm going to set it down. Maybe if I set it down, it won't shake up so much. How's that? It was a family affair. You know, my mom worked just like a man. My mom was my dad's partner, and whatever he wanted to do, she was there to do it. And if he couldn't be there, she'd do it for him. And that's just the way it was, and that's what we growed up with. And things like that, hay baling, it was always a family affair. My mom would hit that hay field just like my dad would. Now, she didn't drive the equipment. Was afraid to let a woman drive a tractor. But she'd work. She'd drive the truck. But we did. We go to them woods. Everybody helped out. We took turns on that saw with my dad. We'd take turns with that little buck saw over there cutting wood. We'd take turns with an axe. We'd take turns with that sledgehammer. And we wasn't, sometimes when we was little, take a long time to split out a block of wood. My dad would let us though. Just pound away on it, son. Pound away on it. We'd finally get it. But in big blocks. Now you might have to split them even more. You'd split them in those halves and then fours. You may want to go eighths. You know, some blocks you'd have 8 pieces out of that one block. And but cutting it down and splitting it up, it wasn't all through yet until you hauled it home and stacked it. And later on hauled it from that stack to the porch so it'd be dry for my mom. Anyway, it was fun. It was a good family thing. We all did it as a family. We did it multiple times during the year. Summer times would be hot back in those woods. But you know, one thing I'll add, back then, all this country that didn't belong to individuals belonged to timber companies. And these big timber companies would have thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. But when they would go in and log, cutting trees, timber out, they would give people the tops, you know, the limbs and stuff, or the parts they didn't haul out for logs. And there was lots of firewood in those, especially when it's cutting hardwood. You know, people would love to get in there and get that hardwood. And they'd go in and cut up all them limbs and rest of the trunk, whatever they didn't carry out as a log. And that's how people got their wood every year. We had our own property, so we cut off our own place. Now and then we went out there a few times and cut out where they was cutting close hardwood timber. We cut limbs and stuff up. But we mostly cut on our own place, and it was a family affair. All right, I'm gonna cut this off and get on down the road. I'm running a little bit late already, and I've turned Ivan out with Miracle, and Sophie and them will stay with the goats. And I love you guys. I hope this makes up a little bit for not seeing little Sophie's hiney today. Hey, I could walk out there and get a good picture of her, I guess. All right, guys. I love y'all. Y'all take care.